A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. As Jesus was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a sizable crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind man, the son of Timaeus, sat by the roadside begging. On hearing that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he kept calling out all the more, "Son of David, have pity on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take courage, get up, Jesus is calling you." He threw aside his cloak, sprang up, and came to Jesus. Jesus said to him in reply, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man replied to him, "Master, I want to see." Jesus told him, "Go your way. Your faith has saved you." Immediately he received his sight and followed him on the way. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
You know, in our contemporary society, there are a number of people who tend to be overlooked. They may be the homeless, migrants, the unemployed, drug addicts, the elderly, those who are institutionalized, or those who are disadvantaged in some way. It is so easy for us to look past such people. And it is amazing to think of the number of people who enter and exit our life and how many of them go largely unnoticed. Now, such could have been the case with Helen Keller, whom I first heard about in high school when I saw the 1962 movie, The Miracle Worker. Born whole and healthy in Alabama in June of 1880, Helen Keller soon contracted a grave illness, and at the age of 19 months became blind, deaf, and eventually mute. 5 years later, on a day Keller called the most important day in her life, March 3rd, 1887, her teacher, Annie Sullivan, arrived. Keller was but 6 years old. She described her experience in these words: "I felt approaching footsteps. I stretched out my hand, and I supposed it to be my mother. But someone took it, and I was caught up and held close in the arms of someone who had come to reveal all things to me, and more than all else, to love me." In her newfound life with Annie Sullivan, Helen Keller not only learned how to read and write, but she would also come to graduate with honors from Radcliffe College. Keller went on to become an author, a political activist, and a lecturer. She died in 1968. If the blind man Bartimaeus in today's gospel had done us the favor of sharing his thoughts at being healed by Jesus, they may have resembled those of Helen Keller. Like that young blind child whose meeting with Annie Sullivan became a turning point in her life, so also for Bartimaeus, whose encounter with Jesus led to a radically new direction for him. The account of Bartimaeus' recovery of sight took place on the way out of Jericho, about 15 miles from Jerusalem. At the time, the roads were very crowded with pilgrims heading up to Jerusalem for Passover. Beggars, as one might suspect, were given scant notice on the roadside. But Bartimaeus was persistent. Twice he shouts out, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." Jesus hears Bartimaeus and responds to his plea to be healed of his physical blindness. But Bartimaeus experienced an even more radical kind of healing, a conversion of heart. St. Mark comments that upon receiving his sight, Bartimaeus followed Jesus on the way. Each one of us here this morning is invited to call out to Jesus with Bartimaeus, "Son of David, have pity on me. Lord, have mercy," as we cry out at every Mass we celebrate. And Jesus will ask each one of us, as he did of Bartimaeus, "What do you want me to do for you?" Might we, like Bartimaeus, ask that we too might see? Some of us may be blind to our own faults and failures, choosing instead to focus on the weaknesses and shortcomings of others. Lord, I want to see. Some of us may be blind to our many blessings and all too ready to complain when these are judged to be lacking or insufficient. Lord, I want to see. Others among us may be so blinded by unbridled desires for pleasure, comfort, satisfaction, that we fail to notice or attend to the needs of others. Lord, I want to see. Some of us may turn a blind eye to the poor, the sick, the lonely, the stranger in our midst, overlooking their plight while excusing ourselves of our responsibility for their well-being. Lord, I want to see. Perhaps our eyes have been darkened by prejudice, failing to recognize and respect those of other races, gender, religion, orientation, ethnicity, social status. Lord, I want to see. Perhaps in the midst of today's charged political discourse, and at times it's hardly that. We are blinded by an ambition that discounts the rights or opinions of others and belittles their achievements or viewpoints. Lord, I want to see. Pride may blind us and prevent us from standing humbly in the truth before God and others. Lord, I want to see. Perhaps we are blinded by our own righteousness, unwilling to forgive and be reconciled with family members, fellow workers. Lord, I want to see. Whatever our blindness may be, the experience of Bartimaeus assures us that healing is possible if we but take to heart Jesus' question to each one of us this morning. What do you want me to do for you? May each of us, like Bartimaeus, have the courage to acknowledge whatever blinds us from following Jesus on the journey of life, the journey up the road, and know his healing in our hearts and in our lives.